Welcome. I'm Rob Moyer, and I'm from the Ocean River Institute. And today we're going to talk about, I'm just by myself here, and I'm going to talk about the planet breathing in and breathing out, and how all of us can breathe more easily if we would work naturally with plants and ecosystems. So there is much more to climate change than carbon dioxide. Of all the molecules rising to cause stronger storms and longer droughts and more fires, pestilence and long and local extinctions and sea level rising, global carbon is the easiest to measure and as an indicator of overall planet health. It's like sticking a thermometer in. You know, we get an instant kind of long-term image. Other greenhouse gases, such as methane and nitrous oxide and water vapor especially, they're very difficult to measure because they're always shifting around and they don't, it's just doesn't make a nice picture that the Keeling graph does. So let me put that up. Tab, Keeling, share. So here we see Charles David's Keeling's graph that he made from the top of Mauna Loa in Hawaii, 11,000 feet high, away from industrial noise. And you see that on the lower left, it's down at about 275 in 1958 when he started. And today, it's gone up to about 415, I understand, is the most recent reading of that. And so this is a 40% increase. Not good at all. This is measuring carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. And so everyone said, oh my gosh, it's terrible. We got to turn off the spigot that's driving this. And the worst emitter is the burning of fossil fuels. And so we focused on, reduce, replace the burning of fossil fuels with green energy sources. And if we look closer here, we see there's more going on than just skyrocketing carbon exhaust going into the atmosphere. You see, it looks like saw teeth going up and down. And closer in, you see there's an annual fluctuation that in the spring and summer, when plants are photosynthesizing, that is when the this graph looks backwards to me. So let's do away with that. So what we're seeing is that during the cold season, the carbon is rising, and during the warm weather, the carbon is not being emitted so much because it's being photosynthesized. The Earth is taking in CO2 during the spring and summer and releasing more CO2 in the fall and winter. And what was cool about that graph was that it showed that the peak of releasing CO2 was in October, not in the middle of winter. And that makes sense. Looking out at the maple tree in my yard, last week it just shed all its chlorophyll from its leaves, turned bright red, and dropped it all down. And so the least amount of, or the most amount of CO2 is being released when we're out there raking the leaves, and it's all gassing out into the atmosphere. So life on Earth is organizing. So we've got organelles that come together to create cells. We have cells organizing into organs, and organs organizing into bodies, and bodies organizing into populations, to communities, to ecosystems. Our planet, one could argue, is a breathing organism, feathered and furred with plants and water. So the carbon is increasing in the atmosphere, not only because massive amounts are being emitted, it's increasing because less carbon is being taken out. Carbon, as you know, is drawn out by the photosynthesis of plants. Before turning to new technologies for solutions to this, we should consider working with what we've got, with nature, with more plants, with water cycles, and the workings of ecosystems. So we get to enjoy wildlife and fauna and flora along the way. So human ingenuity, with much technology, has been shifting global inhalation for some time. The global carbon dioxide levels began to rise about 8,000 years ago. This was a time when humans were changing from hunter-gathering to agriculture. And first there was the hoe, and later the plow. They broke open the verdant surfaces, they cut the roots, they turned under vegetation and increasing the rot coming out of that mixture, and exposed carbon-rich soil to the air. And so green surfaces have been lost and more greenhouse gases are being emitted. So we see, the Sahara and the Middle East going from green coverage to just deserts. Over the last 2 centuries, planetary suffocation has worsened with industrial revolution, hand in glove with increasingly more emissions was the denuding of landscapes, of grasslands, forests, and increased coverage by agriculture. And here, the invention of synthetic fertilizer accelerated the gassing out and the washing away of topsoil, erosion, and smothering sediments when the stuff was spread out across mussel beds and rivers and coral reefs and so forth. So by the 1930s, we were spreading lots of synthetic fertilizer. Vast tracts of farmlands were hit with drought that further dried out exposed soils and plants lacking deep roots. And so dirt particles were picked up by the wind and held with water molecules, creating haze. And this prevented water from falling onto our fields. It was locked up onto those dust particles, and thus the Dust Bowl followed. And increasing cultivation of the land, while not recognizing the faults of tilling and fertilizer, we were blind to the consequences that were happening as we denuded the landscapes. Today, we are once again on the brink of a second Dust Bowl. Dust over the Great Plains from 1988 to 2018 has increased by 5% per year. So over those 20 years, that's 100 dust loading and then moisture trapping up in the sky. That's not good. I want to show you Christine Jones' diagram. She's just doing remarkable work. So here we have Christine Jones. This fabulous diagram. So here we see the grasses are the tycoons of the carbon economy, moving vast amounts of carbon from air to soil, organisms to the soil organisms, and then on to the food pyramids and on out to the web of life. So prairie grasses, they're legendary for the richest and thickest topsoil. Saltmarsh grasses, large amounts of carbon dioxide, and lock it into largely anaerobic soils, that mucky stuff in the marshes there. And even the ubiquitous lawn grass is, if left to its own devices, pumps liquid carbon into soil as root exudate. So the lawn grass can sequester up to 1 inch of soil a year, or that's about 300 tons of black carbon per acre laid down. And so to produce 1 ton of liquid carbon through photosynthesis, grass plants will draw out of the air 3.67 tons of carbon dioxide. That means an acre of established lawn, adding 1 inch of soil, is 1,000 tons of soil. No, that means that 1,000 tons of CO2 has been captured out of the atmosphere to put 1 inch into an acre of soil. Stop sharing. The problem with applying synthetic or natural fertilizer to an established lawn, much like feeding children sugar for breakfast, the grass greens up quickly, and it greens up quickly and spreads its roots out on the surface, and so it's thin and sparse, and it quickly wants to have more fertilizer, and it dries because the roots are on the surface, so it needs more water. So you don't blame the lawns for polluting and requiring more water. You blame us who are managing. We're mismanaging the lawn. It's not the grass fault. So fertilizer sales are stoked by treating our lawns like a car in need of regular oil and brake pad changes. They asked to look under the hood, under our turf, to ascertain how they'll keep our lawns growing green. And then printed on the bags of fertilizer are the instructions to apply the fertilizer on Easter, Memorial Day, 4th of July, Labor Day, and in the fall. I can't wait for Labor Day for that last sale. So the more applications, any more than that, applied or spread per application or more applications, that'll burn the grass. So this is the maximum you can put down before the grass is burned, but it's not exactly it's a little bit more, it's a lot more than the grass needs, if it needs any at all. And we're told that, you put any less down, your grass will suffer and will die and so forth. Not so. So not fed from above. You don't put the stuff on top of the grass, then the grass roots will go deep and open up the compacted soils that otherwise become compacted. When you're fertilizing, you get these bare spots. We call them sun spills because the sunlight bakes it and further kills the organisms in the soil and stuff. So we don't want to fertilize. And the grass plants depend on that symbiosis below the ground with the fungi and the bacteria and the web of life that is known as the rhyosphere. And this is a place less understood than the ocean. It's vast networks of mycorrhizae fungi that are transporting chemical messages from the grass cells to specific bacteria that are able to detect the message. And it's, one type is working on fixing nitrogen, another one's like extracting boron or something like that. And so it responds and puts that into the microbial bridge and sends it back to the cells in need. So we've got this amazing network going on underneath your yard. The largest organism in the world is believed to be these mycorrhizal fungi. As long as your lawn is, if your lawn is smaller than a great blue whale, then maybe you haven't got the largest organism in the world. But it's just massive the way these things, and they stretch out and reach out to trees and shrubs. So the whole system is working together. So it's not either or, it's what grows best where. But the fastest carbon sequesters per year are the grasses. And so let's bring up my rabbit picture now. Coming into the home stretch here. Tab. Nope, not that one. Uh-oh. Oh, I think I lost that one. Anyhow, I had a nice picture of a rabbit sitting on the grass of my neighbor's lawn. And that's to say that to arrest climate change, it starts at home, in our neighbors, in our yards, and in our neighborhoods. So let's turn established lawns into carbon sequestration engines by not fertilizing, by not spreading even organic fertilizer or synthetic. We save money, and we encourage the grass roots to go down and start pumping that liquid nitrogen out to the soil, into the soil, to feed all those critters. The soil holds. And something else we can do is to turn impervious surfaces, because that's part of the problem. We've got more and more impervious surfaces, so there's less and less photosynthesis happening, drawing the stuff down from the atmosphere. So if you replace your patio, if it had an impervious surface, with a lawn or with grass, that's going to not only feel better under your feet, but that's going to be pulling carbon dioxide out of the air, and it's going to be building soil, and the soil in turn will hold more water. It's healthy, it's porous, it's like a sponge. And so that better protects our homes from extreme weather events, from these storms or from these dry periods, because we're able to hold more in the land. So soil gives us the largest, soil gives us the largest carbon capture paycheck in the world. Soil is but a small percentage of the Earth's surface, yet soil holds more than 3 times the global amount of atmospheric carbon. So in the atmosphere. That's also about 4 times the amount of carbon that's stored in all the living plants and animals. So the neat thing about soil is that whereas having a forest is considered, even though it's, maybe not when it's an old forest, but storing it in the plants is a short-term answer, because the plants will release it again. Soil will hold the carbon longer, especially when the compost and the decomposing bits and all that are chemically transferred into humus, because humus is very stable for centuries or thousands of years. So this is a great way to store for long term the carbon in the soil. And it's also a great substrate for all kinds of life on Earth. So, and if you add a cubic yard of soil to your yard, that'll draw in 4.4 gallons of water into your neighborhood, into your yard, into that watershed. So the more we can have soil, the more we can retain water in our watershed. So healthier soils, more water retention, more complete green coverage, less impervious surfaces, and then if you have an impervious surface, well, you can put a potted plant on top of it, or you can do roof gardens or whatever. We just want to have the plants facing up, and that will better protect your home from extreme weather. And research has indicated that by acting locally with more vegetation and retaining more water in those local water cycles of the plant pulling up the water and releasing through stomata the moisture. So when it releases moisture through when the plant releases moisture, it creates dew, and the dew absorbs some heat. So or the moisture is there for dew, and then the formation of dew, condensation, pulls heat in, and that helps to warm the soil, or so it helps the whole cycle go round. And conversely, when plants release water and it evaporates, it has a cooling process. So you'll notice on a hot summer day, I noticed this walking down Summer Street in Somerville, there's this big beech tree on the top of the hill there. And on these incredibly hot summer days we had last summer, the coolest spot was not in the shadow under an awning, but it was under this tree, this enormous beech tree, because it was releasing water, vapor, that was evaporating, and that evaporating physical process is pulling heat out of that spot. So the plants are regulating, these are called green water cycles, where they are helping to keep the water within their roots, within their soil, within their ecosystem. And the more we can do that, the more we can decrease our sea level rise. And so research indicated that by acting locally with more vegetation and retaining more water in our local cycles and not flushing so much out through our combined stormwater overflows and stuff, we can decrease sea level rise by 25%. So yeah, be upset about what's happening in Greenland and the ice melts and stuff, but be responsible and steward your own communities, your own yards, your own neighborhoods. So let's keep the water cycling and keep the plants photosynthesizing. So that keep drawing the carbon CO2 out of the atmosphere. And so together with that, we can make a real difference by acting really locally on the global climate change problem by doing two things: by decreasing our emissions, by decreasing our carbon footprint, and by increasing our drawing out of the air carbon dioxide by increasing the work of green plants. So when you walk on the yard, when you walk on the grass, or you cut the grass, that disturbs the grass and causes it to grow more, and it puts out chemical signals, send me more nutrients. So by just walking the dog or by having a picnic, you're helping to stimulate more sucking of carbon out of the atmosphere, more CO2 coming out, and healthier soils underneath. So we invite you to join with the Ocean River Institute. Visit our webpage at oceanriver.org, and you'll see 6 campaigns there. And one of them is about lawns for healthy soils. That means non-fertilized lawns for healthy soils to fight climate change. And we're asking communities, we're going town by town, to pledge voluntarily, no regulations, just voluntarily, don't put the fertilizer on your lawn if it's established lawn, and let the roots go down. Let's get more engaged. Here in Massachusetts, we have more than 2,000 square miles of lawns, of domestic lawns, and owned by all of us. And if we could turn that from being carbon sinks, or carbon, if we could turn that from being fertilized and therefore impervious soils to healthy soils, we would be going a huge step to reducing our carbon footprint by drawing the carbon out of the atmosphere. Now remember, 1 acre of soil, if it's allowed to put on 1 acre of lawns, if it could put on 1 inch of soil, will draw out of the atmosphere 1,000 tons a year of CO2. So please join with us at the Ocean River Institute, www.oceanriver.org. And you'll see there that different communities have already set up their own pages to encourage people locally to not fertilize their lawns, take better care of their land. We were thinking of having a contest, a reward to the communities with the highest percentage of landowners who pledge not to fertilize their lawns, that there would be some kind of prize. But right now, we're just trying to get people engaged in the activity. I'm also going into a high school, a private high school in Lynn, Massachusetts. And there we're looking at the lawns around the school and the lawns at Red Rock Park. And we found that the lawn around Red Rock Park has more coverage, a greater percentage, and less dirt showing, whereas the lawn at the school has more dirt showing, which we think could be because it is being fertilized. And so the grass roots are staying on the surface to get the fertilizer. And the plants are kind of wimpy, that they're thinner, they're easier for pests to chew on. They're leaving real estate open for pests, for weeds to come in. Whereas the less fertilized lawn in on Red Rock has much denser foliage because the grass can grow down, the microbes and the fungi can feed it, and so it's healthy, and so it's thicker leaves, it's lusher growth, it's fuller in there, and so it's more resistant naturally to the weeds in the grass, to weeds and to pests. So that's our episode today about how we can all breathe deeper if we can just encourage the planet to breathe easier with more photosynthesis, more of nature working with us, not less. So until next time, I'd like to thank you all for listening in to this program. And please take care of yourselves, and then take some time to take a little better care of this planet by stewarding our own places a little bit more greener. Thanks a lot for listening.
Hi, my name is Bill Baird, and welcome to Pandemic Profiles. In each episode, you're going to get some perspective and some tips from your fellow Cambridge residents on life during this tumultuous time in our lives. So our first guest is Bill Boone. Bill is a retired business consultant. He lives in Central Square, and he's very actively involved in community theater here in Cambridge. Bill, welcome.
Thank you very much, Bill. Good to be with you.
So first question is, what single word describes how this pandemic has changed your life?
Well, interestingly, because I'm retired, not much. I run this Shakespeare program. I'm involved in courses at the Harvard Institute of Learning for Learning and Retirement, but we've now all gone electronic. So I am able, unlike some other people, to stay in my apartment, and I leave this place once every